Okay, welcome back to our video lesson. So right now we will talk about the characteristics, processes, and ethics of research. Okay, so the first characteristic we have empirical research. It is based on direct experience or observation by the researcher. So as a researcher, you can also make an empirical research in a sense that you are basing on your own experience or observation in towards a certain concern. For example, you can be part of an institution with problems about mental health. You can you can be part of that institution and observe the behavior of people with mental health, how they cope up with anxiety, and how the institution helped them to somehow be positive when it comes to their lives and their perception in lives rather. So, as a researcher, you can also base your observation with their characteristic or with their character, with their experience, how they react, and how they communicate with people. So, in that case, you can make a research based on your own observation. It can also be direct experience. If you, the researcher, already experience exact thing, then you can also use your own experience to create an empirical research. But again, if you're using your own experience or you're including your own experience, you also need to support it with facts. You shouldn't just narrate your experience and it ends there. You should always include other studies, other experiences, and observations as well. Okay, next. Number two is logical research. So it is based on valid procedures and principles. So when we say procedures and principle, it is about following rules, following guidelines, laws, certain process. So it needs a logical analysis, logical information. So if you are doing a research or a logical research, you have to make sure that you are following a certain guidelines, a certain rule. Let's say legalization of divorce in PH. So if you are promoting the legalization of annulment or let's say divorce rather here in the Philippines and that is your topic in your research, then you have to make sure that you indicate the following guidelines and rules why the Philippines are against this law or this let's say this proposal, why the Philippines is not yet approving the proposal of this divorce bill. And also, if you are in favor of it, you also need to indicate why are you in favor of it? What are the benefits? What are the things that we will gain if this will be approved by the Senate or by the government? So, what are the principles? What are the processes that we need to consider in making it possible? Okay, so we need to make sure that we are following a certain procedure or guideline for this one. Okay, next, number three. Cyclical research or a cyclical research is a process because it starts with a problem and ends with a problem. So it derives from a term cycle. So when we say cycle, it's like an ongoing issue. There's no ending and there's no beginning. So it's like um, a circular problem, right? So it starts with a problem, it ends with a problem. So let's say you discover a problem, you come up with a solution, but at the end of the day, your solution um, have a problem as well. So let's say before we are promoting that we should remove plastics here in Cavite. And then, yeah, we successfully removed plastics here in Cavite. However, in removing the plastics, we replaced it with eco bag, or rather with paper bag. Okay, so before the problem was plastic because it affects the environment, it's either affects the health of the people, so it's not healthy. So they come up with this paper bag, which they say that it is environmental friendly. But there is a problem as well with these um, paper bag. Other people are saying that it harms the environment. It's not an environmental friendly because there are a lot of trees that needs to be, removed or cut because of this paper bag. And also, it is not it's not convenient because if it gets wet, if it's get wet, then it's no longer be reusable, or it's not reusable then. So they come up with another solution. So from this paper bag, they come up with eco bag. So eco bag is washable, reusable, it's handy compared to the paper bag. So still, there is a problem with that. Why? Because a paper bag, you need to pay for it. It's like 10 pesos, 15 pesos, or depending on how big you need or how big the paper bag you need is. So you need to pay for it. It is not free. So as you can see, if there is a problem, you try to resolve it, but at the end of the day, the solution that you presented is also can occur also a problem. So it can also result to a problem rather. So it's like a never-ending cycle of problem that somehow ends with a problem as well. So there are a lot of issues right now that we can consider as this technical research, but then you can also use that as one of your idea in creating a research. Next is we have the analytical research, which utilizes proven analytical procedures in gathering the data, whether historical, descriptive, and experimental and case study. So if we have analytical research, this needs to have a deeper analyzation. So for example, you need to gather more data, most especially if you are doing a historical research. When we say historical research, this is about anything about history. So we know the fact that we cannot change the history. So hence the reason why you need to have or to be analytical when it comes to identifying or gathering data from a research history research rather. So you cannot just depend on the hearsay, we cannot just depend on the opinion, the experiences of other people, but you have to dig more when you are talking about history. So people knows a lot when in history, and there might be a huge chance if you release a research about history and it's not reliable and it's not effective, or it's not, what do you call this, it is not legit, the information was not complete, then there might be a huge possibility that you will receive a lot of criticism. Why? Because history can never be changed. So, for as long as you are not that familiar in history, there will be a huge possibility that the people will make a wrong impression of it. Okay, there are a huge possibility that these people will also have, you know, can change their minds when it comes to their beliefs, perception. You can also this can also cause problems in the future. So you have to make sure that if you're making an historical research, descriptive or experimental or even a case study, you have to dig more data, gather more data, and it requires deeper analyzation of data. Okay, next. For number five, we have the critical research. So when we say critical research, it exhibits careful and precise judgment. So when we say critical, this is something that we need to be more careful, extra careful. Why? Let's say we are talking about something personal issue. Let's say it is about mental health. We are digging a mental health of a respondent, wherein we have to dig more of his or her privacy, we have to dig more of his or her experiences. So we need to make sure that we are careful in getting personal information, and we are also need to be careful with giving judgment. Okay, so critical research are something that is a little crucial, let's say. So you need to make sure that you are just giving careful judgment, you are giving acceptable judgment. So you need to be to establish professionalism if you're doing critical research. So you shouldn't just, for the purpose of you having a successful research, you are forcing your respondent to tell more about their personal lives. So you shouldn't do that. You should be more open with the feelings of your researcher, or feelings of your respondents rather. At the same time, you are being careful with gathering data about them. So there are a lot of research that we can consider as critical or crucial. So the only thing that we need to remember is that we need to be careful and precise with our judgment. Okay? Next, we have methodical research. So it is conducted with a manner without bias using systematic method and procedures. So when we say methodical research, we need to, of course, always be um, effective in a sense that we are not biased or we are not showing any bias from whatever issue it will be. So we are following a systematic method and procedure or a process, and regardless of what the issue we are talking about, regardless of the process, the methods and procedures we are considering, um, we should not always consider being biased towards a certain issue. So, as a researcher, it is your responsibility to be fair, okay? To provide fairness to your research or statistical data, to your statistical results, or even to your participants. Okay, next. Replicability. So when we say replicability, the research design and procedures are replicated or repeated to enable the researcher to arrive at a valid and conclusive result. So when we say replicability, why is there a need for a research to be replicated or repeated? Because it is important for us to, you know, to have updated information. Why? Because every year we are experiencing new problems. Every problems we're experiencing new solution. So we have to make sure that the research that we have are updated. Okay, we can compare the data before and the data or the current data right now and see if the problem is still ongoing or the problem is improved or the solutions are improving. So we have to make sure if we still have the enough research or data that we need for a certain concern. So time time to time we need to update the research because time to time problems are also arising and we need an updated or advanced solution towards a problem. Okay, so if you are using an old research that is currently related to your topic, then you have to make sure that you credit the first author. You have to include them in your references. You have to mention them from your research so that it will not be plagiarized. So you will not be tagged as plagiarized writer. Okay, so again, we replicate a research because we need an updated research. We need to make sure that what we have for the research are all timely and relevant. The solutions should be released depending on the time and date that we need it. Also, the problem should be addressed also from time to time. Okay, so it needs to be updated. Okay, so next. Okay, so we will jump into the ethics in research. So when we say ethics, it's like the manner, the right thing to do. What are the things that we need to consider in research? First things first is that the informed consent. So you shouldn't force your participants to answer your question. You shouldn't force them as well to give out information, personal information. Like what mentioned, participation to the study will be completely voluntary. So you have to ask for permission. Is it okay with you to be part of the research? And then if they said yes, then you can start from there. But if they said no, then you cannot do something about it. You cannot force them. It should be voluntary. It is the right of the participants to say no. Okay? You shouldn't just say that no, you need to answer this. And aside from that, you need to inform your participants what is the research all about. You shouldn't just ask, is it okay with you if you'll be part of the research? And then you will not even giving them an idea what is the research all about. So in asking permission, you should also include a brief information about the background of your study so that they will have a clear vision of your research. And in that case, they will have an idea if they need to join you or what. Okay? Again, this should be completely voluntary and confidential. So the information of your participants will only be between you and the respondents. Okay? Next. we have honesty. So it report data, results, methods, and procedures, and publication status. So do not fabricate, falsify, and misinterpret interpret the data. So whatever the result of your study, it should be posted in your research. So you shouldn't fabricate, falsify, or misinterpret the data. People really need to know the truth. So we shouldn't fabricate the result. So whatever the problem is in the solution we have for a certain concern and it results to something negative, we should always um, provide the idea or provide the answer in our research. So we shouldn't change it, we should not fabricate it, and we should not falsify it. If the result was negative, then let it be. Okay? People deserves to know that this happened. Okay? So for example, we have a research of our research is focused on how Filipinos are coping up with anxiety. And then the end of the research, the result was people are still not um, coping up. No, they still don't know how to cope up with their anxiety in this pandemic. If the result was negative, then we have no choice but to release the result. And then with that negative result, future researchers should think of another way for us to be able to resolve that pending issue. Okay, so we have to be honest. We should not fabricate it. Whatever the result is, then show it. And then the next researcher who will continue your research will be the one to think what is the best solution towards this pending problem. Or you, as a researcher, you can even continue your own research if you would like. Okay, next. Objectivity. Avoid bias in experimental design, data analysis, data interpretation, peer review, personal discussion, grant writing, expert testimony, and other aspects of research. So, in doing objectivity, all you need to do is to aim for your goal. So, in objectivity or in every research, we have this goal, right? So, all we need to do is to um, present accurate information, accurate data interpretation, and we should avoid bias always. So our objective is to set awareness, provide information to our audience, and we should always eye for the goal of our research. Okay, next. Number four, integrity. So when we say integrity, you have to keep your promises and agreements, act with sincerity, strive for consistency of thought and action. So in this case, if we have the integrity, is like working even though no one is watching. So even though you are just the one who know your research, or you're just the only one who's working on your thesis, you are the only one who knows what's going on in your research, and then at the back of your mind you have an idea of fabricating the result. No, it's a no-no for a researcher. Even though you are the only one working for your own research, even though you're the only one who knows the truth behind your research, you should always be consistent with your action. You should always be consistent with your results. Okay? Next is we have the carefulness. So when we say carefulness, it avoids careless errors and negligence. Carefully and critically examine your work and the work of peers. Keep good records of research activities. So when we say carefulness, all we need to do in here is that we should never ever release a paper or a research that are not being corrected by someone. If you are a writer and you're the one who wrote your own research, there might be a huge possibility that it will sound perfect for you because you were the one who wrote it. You were the creator of that research. So in that case, you need to have someone to read your work so that it will be easier for you to see if there are errors that you missed. You know, if you are the writer, it will be not easy for us to spot our own mistakes. Okay? It is so difficult for us to spot our mistakes. Hence the reason why we need to ask someone or a peer to check our work and see if we still have pending errors or if we still have problems with our writing, right? So we have to be careful about choosing words. We need to still check grammars. We need to still check errors in writing. We still need to check some grammar errors, issues, or sentences problems, spelling, punctuation, and what. So we need someone to check our work before the actual publishing of your research. So we can also have a um, copy reader, a proofreader for us to be able to make sure that this will be valid before the publication. Okay, next. Number six, openness. Share data, results, ideas, tools, and resources. So we have to be open to criticism and new ideas. So as a researcher, you have to make sure that you are open with criticism and new ideas. So you shouldn't be just based on your own ability as a writer. So you should always make sure that you are open with all ideas, all criticism, and all corrections. So as a researcher, you will experience a lot of revision, you will experience a lot of errors, but still you have to use it as a motivation to improve your work. Okay? Next, we have number seven is respect of intellectual property. So you should never plagiarize or copy someone else's work. Okay? So when we say intellectual property is like getting someone else's idea, getting someone else's knowledge, or getting someone else's research without any permission. So whether it is published or unpublished, for as long as that it is not yours, you are not the one who created it, then it can be categorized as plagiarism. For as long as you didn't ask for permission from the exact or the real owner of the research. So you have to make sure that you respect for intellectual property, wherein if you will be using a different research from your research as the reference, you have to make sure to mention the author or the right author in your references. Okay? Next, confidentiality. So when we say confidentiality, you have to protect the confidentiality of your research, most especially of your participants. Let's say we need to consider the name, the personal information, their answer to your question, it should always be confidential. Okay, so the result of the study or the result of the survey or interview that you conducted should be only between you and the respondent. Okay. Next, number nine, responsible mentoring. To help educate, monitor, and advise others, promote their welfare, and allow them to make their own decisions. Okay, so in a group activity or in a group research, you also need to make sure that you are allowing your members to make their own decisions as well. So remember that all of your decisions or all of your ideas can be combined and can somehow make a huge difference or a huge help to your research. So you have to monitor and be open with other decisions and opinion as well. Okay. So next is number 10, responsible publication. So publish in order to advance research and scholarship, not for your own career. So if you publish a research, you have to make sure that you shouldn't just base on your personal gain. Okay, you publish a research because you wanted to be famous when it comes to research. You wanted to improve your credential, that's why you publish a research. You need to make sure that you publish a research because you wanted to help other people. You wanted to set awareness to people. You wanted to give advanced information to people. So that's the main goal why you are creating a research. It shouldn't be about yourself, but it's for other people. Okay? Next, you have to respect your colleagues. So, in creating a research, of course, there might be a huge chance that you will be paired by other people or you will be part of a different group. So, you have to make sure that you need to respect the opinion, treat them fairly, and do not outsmart others. All of you have a different level and different ideas. So, you need to make sure that you are considering each ideas. And in that case, there might be a huge chance that it will result to a better or perfect research instead. Okay. And then number 12, social responsibility. So the main reason why we are releasing a research or why we're conducting a research is for or to promote social acceptance and prevent social harms. Okay. So when we have a research, it can either be two. First, it can be resolving a problem, and second, it can be identifying the problem and or preventing a problem. Okay. That's for the social responsibility. Next. Non-discrimination. For the non-discrimination, we have to avoid discrimination against colleagues or students on the basis of sex, race, and ethnicity. So in this case, we should never include any discrimination to our research article. You shouldn't tackle racism. You shouldn't tackle anything about um, negative things that can harm or can offend other people. You should always make sure that you are not biased, or you should also make sure that you are just giving a proper judgment towards a certain issue. Okay, so avoid discrimination. Next, competence. So the beauty of being a researcher is that it helps you be more professional and have a lifelong expertise in education and learning. Because as a researcher, you need to study a lot. It is a non-stop research, non-stop of reading. Hence the reason why it makes you a better person and a professional as well in all aspects. So it develops your confidence as a person, your competence as a writer, your expertise as a professional. So it also promotes competence in science as a whole. Okay, so not just for yourself, but also for other people. Okay, next we have number 15, legality. So now, know and obey relevant laws and institutional and government policies. So before you publish your research, you have to make sure that you followed the laws and guidelines before publishing your work. Okay, most especially with the copyright. Copyright is very crucial. So you have to make sure that you are checking your copyright. Are you using a different research or different research? Are you sure that your research is not plagiarized? Are you sure that you check all the details you need before publishing it? So it's really important. Okay. Number 16, animal care. So you shouldn't use animals or animals for experiment. For as long as it can harm them. You can use them in some other way, but if you will harm them or conduct poorly designed experiments for animals just for the sake of you having a successful research, that is a no-no. Okay, so you shouldn't do that. Also, for human subject protection, if we have the human subject protection concern, we have to make sure that if a person is involved in your research, you have to make sure to respect their dignity and privacy. Okay, so if there are things that they do not want to share, then just let them not to share it. Okay, do not force them to share something that they cannot share. Okay, and even their protection or their privacy, that should be your priority as a researcher. Okay. All right. So for the ethical standards in research writing, it says that the research misconduct includes fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism. It doesn't include honest error of differences of opinion. It can erode trust between researchers and funding agencies, which make it more difficult for colleagues at the same institution to receive grants. Okay, so we have this called plagiarism. So plagiarism refers to the act of using another person's idea, works, processes, and results without giving due credit. It should not be tolerated as the authorized used original works, a violation of intellectual property rights. So how will we know if our place was being plagiarized? Or how will we know if our piece or our text or our research was being plagiarized? And how will we know if we are plagiarizing someone else's work? So, first things first is that failure to cite quotations and borrowed ideas. So, if you fail to mention the person or the original author in your references, then that will be considered as plagiarism as well. Next, failure to enclose borrowed language and quotation marks. So, if ever that you fail to include the enclosed or to enclose a quotation mark from other people, then there might be a chance that it will be tagged as plagiarism as well. Next, if you just sincerely or if you seriously just copied everything or the entire article and paste it to your research and claim it as your own, is also categorized as plagiarism. So it is not bad for you to get ideas from the internet and other journals, but you have to make sure that you summarize it or you also need to make sure that you paraphrase it, revise it. You can get it or you can have it as a source of idea, but never claim it as if it's yours. You have to make sure to create your own and get idea from that internet resource. Okay, you have to paraphrase and summarize it to make it your own word or your own interpretation. Okay, all right, so that's it for the characteristics, processes, and ethics of research. So we will proceed to the next video for our next lesson. Again, thank you so much for watching this video and bye bye.